Welcome, Wargamers, to the untamed wilds of Gioran, where if you listen closely, you can hear a disturbing sound. Cackling and screaming, but most distinctively, the weird sound of bouncing. Because today we're taking a deep look at a specific force from the Gloomspite Gits known as the Jaws of Mork. This faction was recently featured in White Dwarf issue 455, if I'm correct, and it was actually also mentioned in the Battle Tome for Gloomspite Gits. It even had like this awesome Warhammer community article showing off some incredibly well-painted models. And so with that out of the way, let's dig into the lore behind the Jaws of Mork. So these mad grots come from the Iskian Veldt of Gioran. This is an open, uncultivated grassland, and it would be perfect for farming or colonization. No one really knows when the Gloomspite Gits first arrived. Given their tendency to hide in these dark depths for extremely long periods of time without any sunlight or anything, they could have easily been there for centuries, but we just didn't know. This specific Gloomspite civilization remained fairly small for quite a long time. Again, people didn't know that they were there. That is, until the Overbounder came. And I'm simplifying this story a bit because I just, with all these, I really want you to go read them. Because I don't want to just straight up read the article to you, but this relatively small army of grots was led by Rizza de Red. He and his kind favored squig riding and racing, always looking to paint things red, because in their mind, the red ones go faster. Well, one night, a loon boss comes bounding in upon his own set of mangler squigs, named Gobbet and Champa. He arrives and immediately challenges Rizza de Red to a squig race, where he promptly defeats the former leader, and now this mysterious loon boss, known only as the Overbounder, asserts himself as the leader of this entire Gloomspite Gits army. So let's talk about this guy. The societal structure, I guess for lack of a better word, that's in some pretty heavy air quotes structure of the Gloomspite Gits is what allowed him to just roll up and take command. Might makes right, and his ability to guide his squigs is the closest thing they have ever come to the idea as far as steering them. They don't really steer squigs, just kind of guide them along in a general direction. He's able to commune with the beast, meaning all squigs of all kind, in a way that no other loon boss can. And it may just be that they listen to him, or that he can actually guess the squigs' actions, like what they're going to do because he knows them so well, and he just kind of works around them. So it looks like they're in sync, even though it's just he understands how squigs act. But there's more going on here than just being a grot that gets along with squigs. No one knows the Overbounder's face or history, and for a species that tends to be incredibly boastful and arrogant, that's highly unusual. You see, he goes to war clad head in toe in thick metal armor. It's rough, it's jagged, there's tons of designs of like the moon etched into it. He speaks very little. He's incredibly aggressive in his military campaigns and is all around a very scary loon boss, one of the more fearsome ones out there. And he never takes that armor off. People don't know who he is. And so his goal, and of course the origin of his name, is to jump over the Bad Moon. So for those who don't know, the Gloomspite Gits revere a strange celestial body they call the Bad Moon. It's literally a moon, sort of. Moons have an orbit. This one kind of zips around like a madman, but this moon has a mad, grinning face etched into it. And like I said, he zips around from realm to realm, attracted to any kind of machinations of the Gloomspite Gits, and where the Bad Moon hangs in the sky, everything goes to hell. Fungal growths erupt from the grass and trees and even people. The endless hordes of grots teem to the surface in a manic excitement. People go crazy, unable to comprehend the horrors that the Bad Moon brings. And this guy's goal is to jump over it. Now, it's said very clearly, no one understands why he wants to do this, right? It's just a grot with a weird idea in his head, and even all the other ones are just like, I don't know why he wants to do this at all. But you know what? Every Gloomspite's into some crazy things, and so that's just what he wants to do. My personal interpretation of this is that since the Bad Moon is so integral into their mythos and their belief system, to jump over it is a true feat for the Grots, a representation of true might. That a Grot who can jump the Bad Moon would truly be chosen by Gorka Morka, the god of destruction armies. That it would be some valiant thing that a Gloomspite could do that would assert their dominance and power. And I've said this in a lot of these lore videos, but when you have a horde army where there's these, faceless teeming masses, it's really the leaders and heroes that set the tone and define the character of the faction. So the plans and machinations of, say, a Skaven warlord will be reflected in their army through which units they favor, the clans they deal with, and so on, and the same is true for Gloomspite Gits. Each army, known as a scrap, is really kind of a cult of personality, where the biggest and the bestest rise to the top. They set the goals and the standard and vision for everyone beneath them. So in this case, we have a scrap of Gloomspite Gits being led by Rizza the Red, who favors the use of squigs as cavalry. And then someone with no name, no history, shows up and schools him at squig riding. Okay, so the scrap at this point values squigs and cavalry, and all of that is just amplified. Maybe they don't all want to jump over the Bad Moon, but they certainly all want to be there watching him when he does, or when he fails miserably. And to do that, as well as join him in all the fun and the mayhem that it will cause, they need to keep up, which means they need to be riding squigs as well. And with all things Gloomspite Gits, once there's an idea or a single grot that's able to get followers, things snowball very rapidly, because ideas, authority, and charisma are highly infectious to these little guys. Simply because it's exciting, it's fun, and typically very destructive. And so there was a time of being of squig breeding and organizing, but then the army that we now know as the Jaws of Mork was born. And that's really what this story and what these rules try to encapsulate. So with their background and origins out of the way, what are the Jaws of Mork like? Well, in a word, I'm going to say unsubtle. The Overbounder's ambitious goal to jump over the Bad Moon requires one thing: the Bad Moon. And so much of the army's time is spent chasing it. So while they are based in Giran, they'll travel just about anywhere and cause all manner of destruction along the way. But this is an interesting idea because the Bad Moon goes where it pleases. So if you're an everyday citizen in an established city, first, you'd get hit with the Bad Moon, right? Sickness would run rampant, fungal growths exploding out of people, the streets filled with folks going mad, unable to grasp what's going on, the dim twilight the Bad Moon emits messing with your vision. This is a living nightmare for sure, but then the ground starts shaking. You can't be sure if it's your mind going wild or an earthquake because the moon is so low messing with gravity and stuff. But then on the horizon, there's this rolling mass of red bounding towards your walls. This is the mighty Squigalanche of the Jaws of Mork in pursuit of the Bad Moon, but now they're going to smash you real good. They just stumbled upon you and you're ripe for the picking. And also they are Gloomspite Gits, so they seize opportunities when enemies are weakened or down or unprepared. They're spiteful little things. But also in a very real sense, the Bad Moon led them here. And this ragtag group of madmen atop very vicious wild animals smash into their victims' defenses in a tide of murder and insanity. Some squigs are big enough to jump clean over the walls and start thrashing the frightened people behind them, and others just start literally chomping through the stonework itself to kind of peel their way in. Either way, once they reach the innards of any town, hope is lost, right? Between the disorder caused by the Bad Moon and the erratic fighting, I'm going to say style, again, strong air quotes, of squig riders, there's very little hope of survival. A White Dwarf article points out a few specific encounters with the Jaws of Mork, or a Vanguard Auxiliary Chamber of Knights Excelsior, so that's the Vanguard Stormcast guys, launched an ambush upon them, hoping to smash the scrap, as sort of like an opening step to kind of taming this part of Giran. But what they realized too late, though, was that the Grots that they ambushed and killed were just the rear guard of the Jaws of Mork, and so when the rest of the army turned around, it annihilated the Stormcast to a man. There's another great story where they run into a horde of Boingot Bounders known as the Loon King's Lancers. It's just another squig-based army, but they owe allegiance to Skagrot, the Loon King. He's like the crazy leader of the Gloomspite Gits. They've all heard about him, and now Skagrot has heard about the Jaws of Mork and has basically said, "You're going to serve me." But the Overbounder declines and a fight ensues, which is pretty typical stuff for Gloomspite Gits. You know, you have one leader in authority, another one tries to seize control, and they fight and they scrap amongst themselves. But one note that makes this humorous, they chose to have this fight right in front of the front yard of a fortress called Guzgummer, a dwarven keep. So try to imagine this, right? Two forces of largely uncontrollable animals just running mad at each other. No steering, no direction, lots of screaming. And you're watching all this insanity play out like on your doorstep in your front yard if you're the dwarves, just looking like, wait, what? And all that stuff. All that chaos you just got pulled into. And so here at the end, I always want to talk about, why is this so cool, right? I will always have a special place in my heart for the Gloomspite Gits. They're crazy, but in a way where they just pull everything around them into it, right? Like, it's just this kind of craziness you can't ignore. It's so wild, it's so out there, and it just, all the events around them are drawn into their little drama. Their internal logic is completely legitimate, right? But the way that they view the value of a Grot's life, or what their purpose is, and how important they are, all play a role in taking these tiny little madmen into shaping world events, right? Crazy like a fox, okay? This seems like a really fun way to build a full squig army based on what's already there. Now, I know it's possible to do a full squig army already, but this just gives you some more rules, a little bit more oomph when it comes to actually doing that. Because, you know, squigs, when it comes to the actual game, don't have as much bite, ironically, as you'd think they would, even though their mouths are half the body of the model. But this really does give them a little bit more teeth. It's also another great demonstration of having a hero who sets the tone and the theme for an army. And so if you do have yourself a Loon Boss on Mangler Squig, you're all set. And one thing I wanted to add here is that I love the fact that Games Workshop took like a lore snippet from the Battle Tome, because that's the first place I remember seeing it, and then they fleshed it out. They made a full article with a few historical notes, some allegiance abilities, and then of course had the whole painting thing up on Warhammer Community. So I feel like they took one little nugget of an idea and just expanded it ever outward. Now I want to see more things like that, because we do see in these battle tomes, they're really great about dropping like alternate versions of an army or some weird motivations, that kind of thing. But it's different when they actually take the time to like flesh it out. Like, no, this is actually a thing that lives in the world, and you can be connected to it, engage with it, and of course, obviously, use them in the game. So I thought it was awesome. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think of the Jaws of Mork? I know it's been kind of a Gloomspite Gits heavy week. It's just kind of the way my show notes panned out, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. And thank you all so much for watching this and listening today. Happy wargaming. Hey everybody, I hope you enjoyed that video. It was made possible by the folks over here to the left. These are my top supporters over here on YouTube and on Patreon that keep this channel going. If you'd like to learn more about how to become a supporter and get some cool things in the process, like exclusive pictures and interactions with me, and get your questions answered here on the channel, go ahead and click any of the links down below or the join button on the community page over on YouTube. Regardless of your choice, I wanted to thank you so much for joining me with this video, and I look forward to seeing you in my next one. Happy wargaming.